Our theme this month is how affirmative prayer works. And today's topic is awarepy. That's spelled A-W-A-R-E-A-P-Y, awarepy. Ernest Holmes wrote a little book, one of the few little books he wrote, in 1948. I mentioned this earlier in the service, on how to use the science of mind. And those of you who have read his major work, titled Science of Mind, probably already know that it was published for the first time in 1936, and then the edited copy in 1926, the original, and 1938, the edited copy, which has remained the same in each subsequent edition. The covers change, but the wording never changes. The page numbering never changes. It's an exact duplicate from publication to publication. So why do you suppose he wrote How to Use the Science of Mind 20 years after that original textbook had been written? Could it be that somebody or some bodies eventually admitted that they weren't always having success using this, making it work in their lives? Maybe Forrest Gump wasn't the first to say, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Maybe more than one of us felt that God was trying to tell us, there's just something about you that ticks me off. Well, last week, those of you who were here heard me say both of those perceptions are just BS. But both of those suggestions are a part of the belief systems of a lot of people. Systems that some people really believe that if your life is going wrong, or if it's a drag, or is unpredictable, that God has it in for them, or See's Candy has it in for them, or whatever, whoever, wherever. Last week we talked about that kind of BS belief system that gets in our way so that our development into the spiritual, magnificent individual that we were meant to be is held back. And we talked about how the effective use of affirmative prayer or prayer treatment, spiritual mind treatment, can change those false beliefs. I suggested that anyone can move past any belief system that leaves them stuck or in the dark. We can make every experience in our life count. We can make every experience in our life happen for growth, for understanding, for healing. We can make every experience in our life include honoring and loving our own humanness. Last week I gave you a list of 7 questions to consider related to your current belief systems. It was my intention to have printed copies of those for you today because I had some inquiries about them during the week. Unfortunately, my printer decided that it wanted to do a software upgrade this morning, and it did, and it shut down, and now it isn't working at all. So instead, if you would like to have a copy of those 7 questions, if you'll just email me, I will make a copy and send it back to you until such time as the printer is working again. My suggestion is, first of all, that you do that because I'd be happy to send them to you. And secondly, bring them into your conscious awareness. Give those questions the BS test. Yes, these ideas are a part of my belief system, or if they are, do they serve me? Maybe they served me at one time, but they don't serve me anymore. Do they serve my highest and best good? Are they positive? Are they loving? Are they prosperous? Are they expanding ideas? Or are they just BS that no longer lifts my heart, my mind, my spirit, my very essence? Because if they no longer bring me joy and peace and happiness and zest for life, they are out of my life forever. And if they do bring me joy and peace and happiness and zest for life, then they, and only they, are now my belief system. So in this little book that I referred to at the beginning of the talk, Dr. Holmes makes the statement, much about what an individual subconsciously knows or believes about himself or herself contradicts his or her true spiritual nature. So asking yourself probing questions, spending time in prayer to uncover the truth about your beliefs and your misperceptions, getting clear on who you really are, is what I want to talk about with you today. Last week I promised you that we would clear up any curiosity you might have about the strange word which is awareness. In today's world, we're beset with opportunities to bring about changes in our lives through therapy. There's the socially correct psychotherapy. There's the ever popular physical therapy. There is the not so well-known aromatherapy and the ominous chemotherapy. And with a little urging, you can probably think of many more types of therapy that are popular in our culture today. Therapy has become a universally accepted procedure offered by the medical profession for the treatment of just about any kind of physical or mental condition. And that's not a bad thing. Quite the contrary. The medical field has developed, presented, and utilized such concepts in the treatment and the elimination of countless physical and emotional conditions in the general population with great success. As you know, in religious science, science of mind, we honor such work and such ideas. We know that God, universal intelligence and power, works in countless ways. God's presence moves through those who practice medicine, just as it moves through those who practice ministry or prayer practitioner. God's power works through medicine just as it works through natural remedies and foods to nourish and restore the body. And God's essence lives in all therapies just as it lives within you and me. However, underlying all of what I just said is the secret to success. And that secret, which is not really a secret, but rather a truth, sometimes unacknowledged, that secret is that until we become aware, nothing moves, nothing changes, nothing heals, nothing manifests. Awareness is the kickstart, if you will, to recognizing your true spiritual nature and living it. Hence this wonderful term, awareness, which was coined by a metaphysician, no surprise, whose name is Reverend Gary Simmons. In his book, Embrace Tiger, Return to Mountain, Reverend Simmons writes, "There is a place within us all where the forces of personality and soul interact to create spiritual growth and transformation. On the surface, this place may look and feel stormy, but we have the capacity to experience the storm from our center, from the eye of the storm, where there is calm and peace, where there is an awareness of God's presence. The power of that message is unmistakable. When we have cranked up our awareness of God's presence and essence and recognize that that is living within us, we are practicing awareness. From that place, we can choose any therapy: medical, medication, food preferences, massage, surgery, prayer, meditation. Get my drift? When we make the decision to heal, to grow, to change, to be secure, to be insecure and take risks, whatever we acknowledge in full awareness, then we can choose whatever method or path we wish to pursue that end. It's all God. Well, isn't it? It's all God. It's all healing. It's all loving. It's all good. It's all God. If it's guiding and supporting, if it's comforting and nurturing, it's all God, folks. It's God doing what God does. Showing up in limitless, fascinating, sometimes annoying, sometimes humorous, but always supportive ways. See, there's this thing about God that some people don't necessarily want to believe, and that is that God always supports us. God always supports us in what we do and what we don't do. God always supports us in what we think and don't think. God always supports us in what we want and don't want. The trouble with that is, for some folks anyway, that if this is so, there's nobody else to blame. Here's an entertaining thought from someone who is sorting out who or what to blame. She writes, "If you love something, set it free. If it comes back, it will always be yours. If it doesn't come back, it was never yours to begin with. If it just sits there in your living room, messes up all your stuff, eats all your food, uses your phone, takes your money, and doesn't realize that you had set it free, you either married it or gave birth to it." Remember the quote from the Bible, "If God be for us, who can be against us?" If God is for us, then we can't blame God. Can't blame our husband, our wife, our children, our therapist, you fill in the blank. There's no one to blame. And there's no need to blame anyway. We only need to be aware. Only be aware. To use awareness to bring our attention to that place within us where the forces of our personality and our soul or essence interact creates spiritual growth and transformation. For as spiritual growth and transformation unfold in us, we make life-affirming choices for ourselves. As spiritual growth and transformation unfold in us, we make prosperous and abundant choices for ourselves. As spiritual growth and transformation unfold in us, we make choices for loving and nurturing relationships for ourselves. There's no longer a need to blame. There's no longer a need to despair. There's no longer a need to suffer. We're free to let go, let God, and let those good times roll. Here's a beautiful example of an uncomplicated understanding of this awareness. A 6-year-old girl, after much effort and time spent, finally learned how to tie her shoelaces. She looked at her father, she looked at her mother, and with a big sigh, She said, "If I have learned one thing in this life, it is that God will not tie my shoelaces without me." This child has a great future in science of mind. God will not tie my shoes without me. This made me think of a quote from the Bible that impressed me when I was a child. I don't remember what book it's in, other than I think it's in the Old Testament. But it was a profound message to me, even at a young age, like the child in the story I just told. The Bible quote is, God helps those who help themselves. God helps those who help themselves. There is great metaphysical application in this simple statement. Not that God requires us to act in a certain way in order to receive its support. Not at all. But rather that we engage in awareness. Rather that we begin to make choices for ourselves and accept that there is a place within us where the forces of personality and soul or essence interact to create spiritual growth and transformation. And we understand that while on the surface, this place may look and feel stormy, but we have the capacity to experience the storm from our center, from the eye of the storm, where there is peace and calm, where there is awareness of God's presence. Dr. Holmes pointed out in this little how-to book, How to Use the Science of Mind, that the accumulated experience of the whole human race is lodged in the subconscious of every one of us. It continues to operate through us until we clear a passageway back through the mind to the presence of our Creator. So don't be taken in by cultural consciousness. Don't be snowed by cultural consciousness. Ages of discord, disease, and distrust have transmitted BS from one person and one civilization to the next. Awareness is how we free our thought from the bondage of these false perceptions called collective consciousness. And affirmative prayer is the method. Even in the eye of the storm, when we are practicing awareness, we see that any storm is outside where we are. Yes, we can learn from its force and its behavior, but it is not our center. Our soul, our beautiful essence, is what is at our center. We are self-conscious, thinking, choosing centers of consciousness. We are God consciousness, individualized. We are evolved from the universal, and whatever is true of the universal as a whole, it must also be true of us as some part of that whole. This is also true of our essence. Our essence will perform based on the ideas we give it. It is not a separate entity, nor does it operate independently of our conscious thoughts and actions. What I just said is monumental in its meaning, because what I just said was that as conscious, individualized centers of thought, we are growing and transforming our very essence. We are feeding the evolution of our essence in this present life experience. We are creating our future in the process. Isn't that reason enough to practice awareness? Listen to this example of growth and transformation from a book titled An Exceptional View of Life by Edward J. McGrath, Jr. I'm not old enough yet to play baseball or football. I'm not 8 yet. My mom told me that when I start baseball, I won't be able to run that fast because I had an operation. I told my mom I wouldn't need to run that fast. When I play baseball, I'll just hit them out of the park, and then I'll be able to walk. You see, growth and inspiration, transformation, are inside jobs. No other person, no other thing can or does mold any one of us unless we permit it. It's the forces of your own personality and your own divinity that are the living essence of yourself. And I have that self in caps. Capital S, capital E, capital L, capital F. These little vignettes that I've been giving you today are dramatic, powerful examples of how wrong the collective consciousness can be. And when you, or I, or anyone is serious about making life work positively, healthfully, abundantly, peacefully, becoming total aware of God's presence, it's imperative that we live those truths, that we ingest those truths, that they become the basis of our own consciousness. Because you see, prayer is not directed toward anyone or anything outside ourselves. Prayer is not something you do for God. Your prayer is not for God's ears. Lest we forget, God is all-knowing, all-powerful, and everywhere equally present. There is no need to find God, to solicit God, or to convince God. Prayer is not conditioning God to answer our needs. It's about conditioning our needs to the activity of God. It's about knowing God as the infinite resource within ourselves and accepting that presence within us so that it can work through us. You know, the word prayer comes from the ancient Sanskrit language. The root word is pal-al, P-A-L-A-L, pal-al. And it means judging oneself to be wondrously made. That sounds like becoming aware to me. Which brings us to the question, why do we call prayer, or affirmative prayer, or spiritual mind treatment in religious science? Because most of us were raised in a culture that views prayer, per se, as supplication or pleading, bargaining with God. But as we move to higher levels of spiritual consciousness and awareness, we begin to understand that our spiritual practice is the way we guide and direct our thoughts, our ideas, and our actions to the greatest expression of our being. Spiritual mind treatment is that. It's the art and science of consciously inducing our thought within the universal mind. It's the act of changing our thinking through clearing negativity, releasing doubt and fear, through the acceptance of the ever-presence of God, and accepting that we can and are in alignment with that. So if your prayer work is a recognition of Spirit's omniscience, which is all-knowing, omnipotence, which is all-powerful, and omnipresent, which is everywhere equally present all the time, and if your prayer work is a realization of your entity with this Spirit, then your prayer is a spiritual mind treatment. And as you come to understand the difference, you also become aware that God is a universal, eternal, and dependable truth. Your word, spoken in this realization, is always heard, always recognized, always acted upon. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. It is always its nature to respond to that which it creates, for it lives within its creation. And that's you. So be aware, be awake, be accepting, for your prayer work, your spiritual mind treatment, your affirmative prayer is always heard, recognized, and acted upon. It's not about making sure God hears and understands us. It's about making sure we understand what it is we intend, for the power and presence is always pouring itself into us. Be aware that your spiritual practice is not for the purpose of overcoming God's reluctance to your intention. Rather, it is your active acceptance of God's highest willingness on your behalf. That's awareness. And so it is.